know? And I was like, no, I was like, everything has changed. I was like, everything is different now. I don't listen to music the same way. I'm not the same person. The like amount of like experimentation and um energy and cathexis with the audience was just like, I was just like, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been missing.
Yep.
I need to know everything there is to know about this, which of course there is endless amounts to know about this.
What's up, folks? Welcome back to the Best Show Ever podcast, the podcast where I interview people about the best shows they have ever seen in their lives. I'm your host, Cam Herdt, and man, it's a pretty cool episode we got going on here. I could not be happier to have been connected to this person. This is a guy who I am becoming quick friends with, having a blast talking with. Isaac Slone is the guest on the podcast today. Isaac is a member of the Phish Studies Committee and has been an integral part of that getting off the ground and becoming a thing. He is also the co-host of the Inappropriate Happiness podcast with a friend of the pod and a friend of mine, Karina Reichman. Isaac talks a little bit about growing up in the city with Karina as friends, going to see music with his dad, and going to see music in New York and across the pond, overseas, and just the difference in crowds and music and the experience that we're all having at these live events. Isaac is someone who is dedicating the larger part of his life to that right now. He is deeply integrated into studying Phish and what is going on at the Phish show. What happens to people when we see live music? What happens to a crowd when they come together? How is it different here than it is from, fans over in the UK, to different parts of the country? Man, like the coolest work, that is what this podcast is all about. I'm, trying to get to know people through the art that they consume and how they consume it. I feel like you get to know a person very well when you ask them about what kind of concerts are their favorites that they've ever seen, and like what makes a great show for them, what makes a great night out for them. And that's what we talk about with Isaac today. And so super cool episode with just an excellent guest. And so hope you guys enjoy this episode. If you've been enjoying all the episodes this season, thank you so much for checking them out. We have got more coming out this season. They're all sitting in a bank right now on the Patreon. We've got about 7 or 8 episodes that have not been released yet. Feel free to dig into those if you'd like to become a member. It's $4 a month to become a Patreon member. You can also support the show for free in a number of other ways. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can rate us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. That helps with the algorithm of everything. And if you've been supporting the show at all, thank you so much. Last week, we were able to crack into the top 200 of the Apple Podcast list. And that's just the coolest shit in the world for a podcast that is just being run by one dude out of his living room. So thank you so much for all the support that you've shown to the show. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Isaac. I'm going to get out of the way here with the intro. But first, enjoy a little bit of music from Loon. I checked out some old episodes of The Pot.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
man, awesome. Just great. I mean, like,
Cool.
Obviously, people are busy these days. Can't just be doing podcasts all the time, but very joyful podcast. And so very silly, very good. It's good buddy stuff.
It is, yeah. I mean, I feel like Karina and my life is like one big buddy comedy. So it was cool to be able to bring it to the airwaves, like temporarily.
Yeah.
And people in our lives got a kick out of it. And it was funny to like show up at Karina's shows and people would be like, "You're iBoogz from the podcast."
Yeah. What's the iBoogz origin story? I got to hear it.
Oh, okay. So in New York City, this doesn't happen so much these days. I guess everything's on SoundCloud now. But it used to be that young aspiring musicians would take to the streets to try to sell their mixtapes. And, at some point I was like, yeah, you know what? I will check out your music. And the guy was so touched. He was like, "Oh, dude, I want to personally autograph this for you. What's your name?" And I was like, "Isaac." And he was like, "Isaac? No, that's an old person's name. You can't be Isaac. You got to be iBoogie." And then it was iBoogie for a long
Hell
time.
yeah.
I was sort of, yeah, and then it just became iBoogz, Boogs, Boggs, Bags. My brother still calls me Bags. Yeah, it's quite a
Dude, that
nickname.
guy gave you a gift that day. Like
He
you
completely,
can't do that
totally.
yourself. You can't be like, you guys mind calling me iBoogz from here on out? Everyone would be like, no.
You know, I recently recalled that my friend Matt Leone, who we'll probably talk about because I've seen a lot of shows with him, he got me a cameo from Chuck Leavell of the Rolling Stones.
Whoa.
And Chuck Leavell goes, "Is that you, Boogs?" And his like Southern gentleman charm, like I don't know.
Oh man.
It's gone the distance, the Boogs moniker,
That guy
yeah.
didn't know what he was doing that day. Or maybe he did. Maybe he really
Or maybe
did.
he did.
He was just like,
I mean, he was an aspiring art. He was an artist, really.
yeah.
You know,
He's like,
it's his art manifesting in a new way.
here's another piece for you. iBoogz. Go along.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
it's really quite something.
Fuck yeah, dude. Well,
Um,
thanks for wanting to do the show. Appreciate you.
Dude, I've listened to every
Are
episode
you
of the show.
serious?
I want to tell you, I literally listened to every episode of the show because as much as I love live music, I love live music discourse, and I think it's just a very important thing. You know, I do some Phish studies. We've had these conferences where academics have given papers on the band Phish,
Yeah.
and my work is always about how music is important to our identities, but it's really in the conversations around music where that begins to really take shape. Because, as you can imagine, like the guy who only listens to Phish and never talks to anyone about it is very different than the guy who talks about Phish, or the girl or person who talks about Phish. It is a whole other thing when you start to talk. So,
Oh yeah.
thank you for your service. It's really the coolest thing.
It is, I didn't realize how I mean, some people are reticent to talk about it. They're like, it's a very personal thing to me. I don't know. I don't want my personal thing picked apart by an audience, And I'm like, that is
Completely.
so real. That is so real. That is so fine. But yeah, I mean, I feel like you learn so much about a person when you start talking about the music that they like or the shows that they've seen or like what was important at those shows. I mean, yeah, you get a pretty good look at a person right away. That's how I've met friends,
Definitely.
and new
Yeah.
coworkers
Yeah.
and shit like that. Like let me suss this guy
Yeah.
out. What kind of shows you been to? What's your favorite one? What was the best part of it?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
Yeah. No, it's an instant kind of layer of connection and depth to a friendship, or even in passing.
yeah,
Yeah. So
but I get that
very cool.
there are so many parts of the live music fan pie chart, especially the Phish fan pie chart, and it's not always a guy who wants to talk into a mic. uh,
Sure.
you know,
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Absolutely. Yeah. But to me personally, it feels like an important thing to continue to put into the world. Is I recently had two publications out about Phish, and it's been interesting to sort of hear how they're received, and um, what we talk about with Phish specifically, but with other bands as well. Like it's more than just a band. It's all of these other things, and to kind of actually articulate what that is a whole other step to like concretely be like, all right, so what is it? What is the more than just a band?
yeah,
About it. It's community, it's economy, it's craft, it's you know I'm a therapist professionally, so to me there's a therapeutic value to it as well, and geography, it's takes us across the country and the world, so
I mean, it is all of those things, and there are parts of the journey along seeing Phish or parts of being at a Phish show where you're like, this is it right here, and then you're like, oh no, this is it a little bit, and like, I do feel like had Rory Scovel on the podcast recently, and he's a comedian, and the episode itself is really not that funny. He was a little like, thank you for the music therapy. This was kind of like music therapy for an hour. It was like the best
right,
compliment I've
yeah,
ever received. I was like, thank you for calling this that, because yeah, I mean, like we got to talk about this stuff and like and catalog, like have these moments in time for the future. Like you'll be able to look back, or I'll be able to look back at myself talking about going to these shows in my 20s and 30s, for real. Like I'll know how I was feeling at that moment. I won't be able to, I'll be able to go back to it, in the can, forever. So it's nice
totally.
that way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The Rory episode was great, and Yeah, I mean, it's also, a container, for further exploration, about our thoughts and stuff like that, so
Yeah, yeah,
it's cool.
and so let's dig into them, dude. I can't wait to dig into your
Yeah,
thoughts
man.
on these shows. Well, and to get started, I mean, as someone who's listened to every episode, man, the next best compliment I've ever received is that. Have you? What is the first show you ever saw in your life?
So the year was 2003. I was 8 years old. The venue was Madison Square Garden, and the band was Simon and Garfunkel.
Whoa! Wow!
Yes.
Legends.
Yeah, totally legends. Went with my parents,
Right.
as they, I,
It would have been wild
the
if you
whole
went by
like
yourself.
going to show the parents. Yeah, going by
If
myself.
you went without him, that would have been crazy.
That would have been crazy. And I remember the lights going down, and it was at the old garden. The garden had undergone a renovation,
Mhm.
but I remember the lights going down and the way that the room looked, and just like feeling this like sudden access to my emotions in like a way that was just totally different. Like I was like, this is, I feel ways that I've never felt before,
Yeah, struck,
and
in a way.
just like totally struck. I was
Yeah.
like, what is this? Like the cheers of the crowd and like the feeling of being in an arena was just totally new to me. I was not like a sports kid or
Yeah.
anything like that. So it was like the first real kind of collective experience of that nature I've had ever had. And there are two moments from that show I really remember. The first being they played the song I Am a Rock.
Yeah, cool.
And I just thought that was like the most profound thing I'd ever heard. I was like, I am a rock? Are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
I am a rock. Wow. Okay.
As an 8-year-old.
And the other being, as an 8-year-old, like, yeah, I was like, okay, I'm a
Yeah.
rock. Yeah.
Kind of a pebble, but sure, yeah. Either way.
And then Sound of Silence.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, okay, that's Simon and Garfunkel. This is Madison Square Garden. And they're playing Sound of Silence. Like, okay. Like, this is very special.
Yeah, majorly special. I mean, like to see that song performed live anywhere, incredible. But there is something about Simon and Garfunkel and their relationship to New York that just makes that. I mean, to have seen that is a very special thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Disturbed do a version of it. I'm sure it's beautiful live.
Yeah, I'm sure that's awesome too.
I'm sure that's awesome. But yeah, hearing those two do it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool first show. Very cool
Yeah.
first show. Were you like after that? Were you like, I've got to see more. I've got to see something else like this.
Yeah, pretty quickly after. My parents are definitely music appreciators. My dad's like a home listening guy. So like I had to be like, wait, we can do this now? I think Karina has like a similar moment on her podcast where she's like, wait, I can go to concerts.
Yeah.
We both grew up in the city. And so I, like, not when I was 8, but like 10, 11, started to sort of like poke around and see like who's playing. And I actually found some stubs for
Love that.
video portion of this podcast, right?
Love that. Yep.
So this one stands out in my mind. Cream at the Garden.
Oh hell yeah,
In
dude!
2005, it was like one of 3 reunion shows.
I was gonna say,
and that was
how many shows did they do in 2005?
I think they did like 4 or 5 at Royal Albert Hall and then 3 at the Garden.
Wow, man, very special.
Yeah.
Sick.
And to see those guys take the stage was a very similar sort of like foundational Simon and Garfunkel-esque experience of just like, this is pretty singular. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like,
And how old were
Yeah.
you for that show? You said around like
that I was probably like 10
yeah. I mean like
or 11.
that,
Yeah.
that is also the age that I start like getting into Jimi Hendrix, like watch the DVD of the Monterey Pop Festival for the first time. Like all that
Totally.
time started kind of creeping into my consciousness around those years, like in a real way, like attaching to it. And Cream is such a like the quintessential that band from that time, and the songs that you get to hear them play, incredible. And so and I'm sure like the I can picture the type of fan in the crowd. Like there is the guitar guy who is there for Clapton, but there are also just these like long time New York music going live music people who are here for this like very special presentation. So I'm sure in the same way as Simon Garfunkel had to feel like, ooh, this is like upper echelon shit here, you know.
I remember the lights coming back on, and I don't think anybody moved for a while. Like, I just remember just being like, we're just gonna like stand here and just take that all in.
Yeah.
You know, and like hearing the solo on White Room, like just like, you know, there's so many verses to that song before it gets to the solo, so there's this like suspense that it's gonna happen, and then like there's this like moment of like still air before they kick right into it.
Dude.
Like, Clapton's wailing, and I'm like 10 years old. I'm like, okay,
Whoa.
wow, like whoa, yeah,
Yeah, dude.
yeah. And then from there, like, if we're gonna go into honorable mentions, are we heading there?
We can get there. Do you have you seem like an appreciator of shows. You seem like someone who appreciates the experience. Do you have a worst show that you've ever seen? And you don't have to put down an artist or anything, but if it was, it could have been your fault as well. That's always the case, you know.
So it's a mixture of both.
Okay.
Part of it is that I was very spoiled the night prior, and I'll set the scene for you. It's in 2022, and one of the academic interests of mine is James Joyce, the author.
Okay. Hell yeah.
And so I like win a scholarship award to present at the International James Joyce Conference. And not only that, but it's like the 100th anniversary of Ulysses, and it's like at Trinity College in Dublin. So this is like the most major
huge
Joyce conference. and I'm pumped. And, you know, as it goes with academic conferences, they usually start on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
This one started on a Tuesday. And in order to get there, you're jet lagged. You want to get there by like Monday morning, you know, latest. So it's kind of tradition to do something the weekend before.
Yeah.
And as you said, I'm an appreciator of shows. So I'm like, what shows are going on? Where can I go see live music? And I choose Liverpool, England.
Fuck yeah.
To go see the Rolling Stones.
Whoa.
And take the ferry from Liverpool over to Dublin to the Joyce Conference after. And so be it. Karina is at dinner with a mutual friend of ours, Brian Kabatsnik, who is a illustrious, you know, has had an illustrious career in the music industry. He's developed international venues for Live Nation.
Cool.
And this is like a few weeks prior. And he's like, yeah, and then, you know, in 2 weeks, I'm going to Liverpool for the Stones. And she's like, wait, come again? And he's like, oh, yeah, no, I'm like going out there for that show. And she's like, you know, Isaac's going to be there, right? And he's like, wait, what? And so we link up. He has all of these, you know, awesome music industry friends from Europe that we're all of a sudden chilling with, whiskey barons, guys with mustaches. It's like, it's on. We're like having so much fun. He brings me into the pit for the Stones, and we're like up close, like pretty close. And he's such a gentle and sweet soul, one of my favorite people. And he's like, Isaac, if it's all right with you, I just think Mick Jagger is best appreciated from the catwalk. Would that be all right with you if we went to the catwalk to watch Mick Jagger? And I was like, Brian, that sounds great, buddy. Yeah, let's do that.
No problem.
And so we had just this incredible night. I'll text you a picture after of like me and the guys hanging out.
Wow, man.
In Liverpool for the Stones. It was just amazing. It was just like, you know, the Stones are one of my favorite bands. I've seen them 13 times. I just can't get enough of like when the lights go down and the announcer's like, ladies and gentlemen, the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, dude.
And like Mick and Keith walk. I mean, I got to see Charlie Watts a bunch, but like when Mick, Keith, and Ron like walk out, it's just pinnacle. It's just the best. Like,
can open with
does
anything.
Not get better.
And they could open with anything, and the place is gonna explode. You know, like
they could do As Tears Go By, and like everyone would be like, yes,
a powerful opening of the show. Yeah,
it's just powerful.
Sick.
You know, I mean, if they did that, to be honest, I would freak out.
Yeah, man.
Like,
oh man.
So that show is killer, major life highlight. And the next night, I'm like hanging out in Liverpool, working on my remarks sort of frantically for the conference, as one does before they present something. And Elvis Costello is at the Liverpool Opera House.
Cool.
And so I walk by the box office, and they have tickets, and I buy a ticket, and I go in and just take my seat somewhere in the middle of the orchestra, and Elvis Costello and the band take the stage. And I'm like, okay.
In Liverpool.
It's not quite the Rolling Stones, but we're in Liverpool. Seeing Elvis Costello, this is great.
Cool.
About the third song in, I'm like, there's something's wrong here. Like, very wrong. Like, I couldn't quite tell if it was the sound or the performance, and like I kind of have a history of being like, ah, it's probably me. Like, it's probably my fault. Like, I'm in the wrong seat. I just saw the Stones, whatever. So I go to the back of the room and I'm like, huh, it's not quite getting better. Like, I kind of can't make out any of the words. He's sort of fumbling through the performance. The time signature, like on stage, sounds off.
Yeah.
And so I leave to go to the bathroom, and then I come back, and there's a full-on like brawl between Elvis Costello and his audience, where they're cursing at each other. Like the crowd has totally turned on him. Like it's clearly not just me. And he, fuck you, and walks off stage like temporarily, and they like bring some techs on and they like fiddle with the equipment, and eventually like the band comes back, but like the vibe was ruined.
Oh
Like
man.
there was no coming back from that.
Yeah.
It was just so kind of awkward. And then he actually took to, I think, social media, and he was like, we had a really rough night in Liverpool. My mom was from there. I was thinking of her. It was just kind of awkward and bad. But everybody has those nights, and I've seen him before and I've seen him since, and you know.
Yeah, I mean, to see something like that live is like that's a one-time thing, more than likely. Like you're not going to see a lot of artists like fight with the crowd and then leave the stage like that. You can
No,
go to
like let alone like somebody of that stature.
right. But I mean, I was just gonna ask like what the difference you felt like between being in a crowd in the UK and being in a crowd in the US is like, like what but I mean, man, I guess that's like maybe like an outlier. Kind of hard to say that you have too much research. Like it's like that's a
Yeah.
singular
Good
situation.
question though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, but certainly the Stones fans were rather passionate, and that was very cool to see. It was very sort of different than a U.S. crowd that might be a little bit more. When the Stones play in New York, it just feels like a portion of the city goes to
Yeah.
see them. It's like
Yeah.
it's not even like diehard Stones fans. It's just like people off the street in New York are going into this concert because it's such a sort of major event
Right.
for when they play the stadium.
Yeah. Same thing if like,
Yeah.
Paul McCartney or something like that comes through. People are
Yeah,
just going
totally.
to that. But it's a little different over there, I'd assume. I know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
like going to sporting events is different over there. Like uh in college worked in an internship where I worked a bunch of golf tournaments. And so I did some golf tournaments here in the US, and it's like a bunch of dudes out walking around getting drunk, being away from their families and things like that. And then over in the UK, it's like it's still this like sort of rowdy atmosphere, but it was so much more of like rooting on the experience, rooting on especially the people that are from the country that we were in. It was in Wales at the time. But I just remember this like loud, passionate, kind of in unison audience for a sporting event out there. And yeah, I don't know. Like there are things in the U.S. that can kind of be attended just because they are things that should be attended, and people aren't necessarily
Yep.
like, full bore into the, you know, passion of what it takes to be at an event like this.
Totally, yeah, and I mean, nothing's coming to mind right now, but a broad audience with very sort of reverent. I don't want to spoil my best show ever yet, but we can circle back to this
Please don't.
topic.
Please don't ruin the best show ever. We can get to your honorable mentions now, since we were so close before. But yeah, do you have any honorable mentions that you would just be remiss if you didn't bring up on the show?
Yes. So thinking about it kind of chronologically, that those years happen where I see those like kind of iconic artists with my parents, and then I start to go out and see music with friends, sort of on our own. And I don't take like a hard right from the classic artists, but I definitely am like more into like indie rock music, like Modest Mouse
Hmm.
and White Stripes and Yeah Yeah Yeahs and all of that stuff, which I'm still very much into, but is a little bit sort of more about the studio albums than some of the music you and I
Definitely.
go see.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of simultaneously got into the Grateful Dead via like Dick's Picks, the live
Right.
releases, and kind of grew up with those in our house. My parents didn't see the Dead, but they were sort of music collectors, and so was really into those. And then Phil Lesh and friends did an 11-night residency at the Nokia Theater in
Wow.
2007.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like 12. And I'm like, I kind of want to check this out, but I'm not so like it seemed like lame to me at the time because I was so into indie rock, that like there was like this Phil Lesh and Friends moniker. I was like, this guy and his friends, like I don't want to like what?
Right.
Like something about the and friends seemed so lame to
Yeah,
me.
yeah. And now that's like such a cool thing. Like everybody's doing an M Friend show, and it's like, but yeah, that is like if you're coming from like a very cool scene of, indie artists, it's
Yeah.
like, what is this lame buddy show?
Totally. But I thought my dad would appreciate it. So we went together and he likes to tell the story that I was like, let's stand by the door in case this like sucks and we need to leave early, which I don't quite remember saying, but I, wouldn't put it past
For
myself.
sure.
And we show up to the Nokia Theater in Times Square, and I'd never seen anything like it, as what outside of a Grateful Dead related show is like.
Yeah.
That night was a really hard ticket. It was the last night of the residency. It was November 11th, 2007, and everyone had fingers up in the air. And I just didn't even know what it meant. Like I was like, why are these people have their fingers in the air to see Phil Lesh and Friends?
Yeah.
Like what? But we go in, it's the theater downstairs. You take an escalator down. You're in this like, it's now the Palladium. It was the Nokia Theater, and then it was the Best Buy Theater, and then it was the PlayStation Theater.
Right.
It's changed hands a couple
Yeah,
times. And the band starts. It's Larry Campbell, Jackie Green, John Mullo, Phil Lesh, like that era
Cool.
of it. And they open with the Golden Road to the Unlimited Devotion.
Sick.
First song, first Grateful Dead album.
Wow.
Come my way, join the party every day.
Yeah.
And there was a balloon drop. And I was like, and people dancing. Like I'd never seen anything like
Yeah.
that. I was just like transfixed. And then they do Chest Fever and then hard segue into Brown Eyed Women. And I'm like on the floor. I'm like, this is everything.
Man.
Then the set break comes, surprise second set acoustic with Phil in his nudie suit. I don't know if you know like the nudie suit.
I'm actually unfamiliar with the nudie suit.
The nudie suit is a jacket made by a guy named Nudie Cohen, I believe is his name. It's a very sort of retro thing, but Phil wore it with the Grateful Dead in 1974, 73, and sort of retired it. But it's this awesome jacket with like, there's like an Illuminati symbol and like a moon.
Yeah, yeah.
He just looks awesome. And they do this like beautiful acoustic set of like, Ripple and Deep Ellum blues and all of that stuff. And then they're like, all right, we'll be right back for a third set. And this is where things really take a turn. I pulled up the set list so I can read it to you on, third set of this show. We got Peggy O, Cumberland Blues. Then it kicks into Uncle John's Band, Cryptical Envelopment, Dark Star, Morning Dew, I Know You Rider, the other one, back into Cryptical, back into Dark Star, Sugar Mags, and then the encore is Unbroken Chain, Broke Down Palace.
Whoa, dude. Whoa.
Yeah. And I just
You did
remember
not
like
leave early.
leaving that show, and I was like, everything has changed. I was like, everything is different now. I don't listen to music the same way. I'm not the same person. The like amount of like experimentation and energy and cathexis with the audience was just like, I was just like, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been missing.
Yep.
I need to know everything there is to know about this, which of course there is endless amounts to know about this. And it really, it just totally shaped who I am. And I just became, very invested in it. And then like a few years later, like they brought back the Dead moniker with Warren Haynes on guitar. And like I got to take my buddy and we got to, like hear St. Stephen in the Garden.
Yeah, dude.
And it was like, it was on from there. And it was a cool time to get involved in it. It was a little bit different than it is now. I mean, Dead and Co. and John Mayer brought a whole other thing to it.
Yeah.
So, I was into the Grateful Dead early, like 2007.
2007, right. Way before some people, but yeah, that's
obviously it was
early days,
late
07.
to the game. Yeah, early days.
No,
right?
but yeah, I mean that hearing that kind of music as a young kid is something that's going to change the way that you listen to music, because you've heard some other classical music, you've heard some like jamming and some soloing, but then you hear that sort of improv and that interplay between a band, you're like, whoa. But if you're there in the room and, like you said, watching the exchange between the band and the audience, it's like an explosion of like, yeah, like you said, everything I've been looking for. Like, this is how I want to see shows. This is how I want to take in shows. This is how I want people at shows to be when they're excited, you know, spinning
It's
with
so
the light.
funny. You use the word explosion. Like after that, I had a blog called Jam Band Jedi where I talk about shows I'd been to, and the word explosion was always
Yeah.
like the room was always exploding. It was just like, and then the band exploded with energy.
Yeah.
You know,
That would make sense that I'm
But
about
yeah.
as good a writer as you were when you were 12. Like, that's, yeah, I'm sure that's like my stuff
that's
is.
not the takeaway from
No,
that.
no.
Not the takeaway.
Yeah. No, but I mean, like that, yeah, you're just, yeah, you are truly, and I'm sure this came up also in these blogs, like you are just like taken away. Like you are
Yeah.
fully in that moment when you're there. And it's like really hard to like analyze, you know, it's really hard to, you're just like there taking it in.
I picked up the bass after that, and I was in like a Grateful Dead cover band called the Leadheads, and you know, like it was cool. We had a moment. We invited Joe Russo to sit in on double drums at our first show, and he did.
Whoa.
Like he was in Further at that point.
That is so
and he
sick.
did. And then we like played like a Further after party. I was like, my life is different now.
Yeah,
this is
dude.
totally different. You know.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, that music really invites you in. You want to play it. Like, it's not like Phish, where I listen to Phish music, and I'm like, I can't play music. When you, like, that Dead music, you're like, I need to get my hands on this. I need to fucking make some choices within this, too, myself, and make it my, yeah, that is so cool. I had no idea. I did not know that you were in a band.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, it was another crazy chapter of things.
Sick.
But yeah, it was great. We got to go on like Sirius XM Grateful Dead channel, like in studio. It was so fun.
Amazing, man.
I got to meet Phil a couple times, talk to him about it. It was just
Wow, man.
very special.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, like about this like jam band community, you know, like when you can really get involved. you can
really get involved.
You can certainly get involved if you'd like to. Any other like honorable mentions from that time, or like as you start kind of creeping forward in your once you get past 12?
Well, you know, Karina talked about Bonnaroo 09 with Phish and Snoop Dogg, and then and also Prince at City Winery, and those were very special shows. I was, you know, we went to those together.
Yeah.
You know, Karina and I met around this time. She was a +1 to my bar mitzvah. we had a mutual friend who was just like, you guys really need to know each other. And then I had like a real buddy in it, you know, and we were going to everything, and you know, we grew up with Trey's kids, and you know, we were just like on the bus in 09, just like hanging Red Rocks 09.
Man.
You know, and then I was like interning at Relics, and then I had friends at Relics who were like, oh yeah, you're coming to like every show with us now. And I was like, all right, I'm 14, 15, I don't know, like let's do it, whatever. But definitely like Phish, what stands out is like the Dick's 8/31/12 where they spell fuck your face in the set list.
Yeah, man.
That was very cool.
Yeah.
I that was awesome. I remember I had friends, Evan and Dana, who were employees at Relics at the time, and I was an intern, and they were like, "You're coming to Dick's," and I was like, "I can't like maneuver that for myself," and they were like, "No, we'll figure it out. Like you'll just show up," and I was like, "All right." God bless them for that. I thank them for that regularly. I think probably annually I'll write them a text saying, thank you for making sure I got to that show.
Yeah, dude.
Because I was the guy walking in like that night with the attitude of like, I don't care what they play. They'll play anything. I'm just happy to see the band tonight.
I'm just lucky to be here.
And they came out and delivered that amazing show. I remember crying during Carini. It was just like this beautiful, blissful, long Carini third song into the set. And I was just like, I'm crying right now. Like, this is amazing. And like waking up the next morning being like, did that happen? Like, did Phish really deliver that show?
That show set the tone for Dick's moving forward through last year. I mean, like truly is like, that is like the experience that people are either trying to like chase or like recreate in some way. Like that is what made Dick's a very special stop. I feel like after that show, like I've listened to that show many,
Yeah.
many times. So, and it is fucking cool. And that Carini is fucking
Yeah.
amazing. And like,
Yeah.
those are the shit, like when you go in to a Phish show being like, I wasn't even supposed to be here. I don't even care what they play. I've got some other ones coming up in the future. I didn't even know I was going to this. Like that show
Right.
somehow, as always, like the one that is like incredible,
Yeah.
blows you away.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. And actually your first show, I really has a very special place in my heart.
Oh,
I
yeah.
went with my brother to that Allstate Arena show, and I remember during that Moon Age Daydream, just like the angle I was at. But I was like, I think there are like sparks flying off of Trey's guitar right now. Like just like
Yeah, I was like
unbelievable.
weeping through a lot of the end of that first set
Yeah.
with my friend who brought me, who's been like the type of guy who's been to 400 shows, and he was like 10 years older than me, and I've said this before, like I basically had to come out to him that I hadn't seen it. We had talked so much about Phish, he was just like, what do
Yeah.
you mean you hadn't been to a show? And at the end of that first set, yeah, I remember there being like a long, long moment of like, what have I been doing? Like I have missed this. Like I know so much about it, but I have completely missed it. Fuck. Like, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
everyone's done that. Everyone's done that one. So
Yeah. Gosh, there are other honorable mentions I wrote down, but I'm totally down to move on to best show ever if you want to right now.
I gotta hear it. I gotta know what it is.
You gotta hear
Yeah,
it.
and maybe we'll get to some other
Um,
ones, but I gotta hear this best show.
You gotta hear the best
Yeah.
show. Okay. The best show I saw is Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band at the MetLife Stadium in the Meadowlands in New Jersey on September 22nd, 2012.
Wow, man.
And I will tell you about why. 3-night run of Springsteen shows. I'm a huge Springsteen fan. Me and my buddy Matt Leone, aforementioned.
Yep.
Anytime Springsteen is in town or in the surrounding area, we will do as much of it as we can.
Yeah.
And MetLife Stadium, Bruce, in the Meadowlands in Jersey is a very special thing.
I mean,
And it used to be that the whole floor was GA, which really changed a lot of different things because every ticket face price was $100 to be on the floor, which, by today's ticketing standards is pretty reasonable. And when he would do multiple nights, there would often be lots of underface or free tickets roaming around. So we would always aim for that. And we didn't care sort of where we were on the floor because it was the Springsteen crowd. So it was never really too packed. So there was just this like atmosphere of like fun and kind of like bacchanalia, but at the same time we were like, both Matt and I are like very like arms crossed, like sophisticated Springsteen fans.
you're a guy that's there to watch the show. At this point, I know that you're there to appreciate the music. You're not with the bacchanal. But
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, no, but it's a funny image, like being like, man, you're texting during the Rising. Bruce wouldn't like that.
Bruce would hate
You
this.
know? Like, dude, you're bringing shame to East Street Nation right now. But like, that's how we were. Like,
Yeah.
we were very diehard about
Fuck
it.
yeah.
But that night, Matt brings his little brother along, Andrew, and I bring my friend from high school, Cleo, and we are like ready. It's like a warm September night. We're so pumped going into the show. Boom. Huge rain delay. We are corralled into this like under the staircase. I don't even remember exactly what it was that we were corralled into, but we were told to wait there. And then there was like a torrential downpour. And that's like 7 o'clock. Then 8 o'clock rolls around and we're like, huh, all right, interesting. 9 o'clock rolls around and we're like, this show might not happen. Like, what's the future of our night look like? Because we were in East Rutherford, New Jersey, with all of these Springsteen fans waiting out this crazy rain delay. Then 10 o'clock rolls around and they're like, all right, the show is going to happen. Everybody hang tight.
It's a 3-hour show.
So we are let into the Meadowlands at like 10:15. Bruce takes the stage at like 10:40. And we're just like, all right, it's on. Like, it's happening. And delivers, the typical like 36 song Bruce Springsteen set list. There's so much to say about the set list, but it was his birthday the next day, And so halfway through the show, we ring in midnight, totally unexpectedly. He plays In the Midnight Hour. The
Sick.
crowd sings Happy Birthday to You. And then he's just like, it's my birthday. Like every 3.5 minutes, he's just like screams that into the mic. And the whole atmosphere in like, I haven't so much talked about it. Like I've talked about the Phil Lesh and Friends show. I've talked about Phish at Dick's, but like talking about it, I'm like a whole new sort of set of feelings about it's coming out. But it was a total just sort of pinnacle for us. And he played until literally, like I just looked at the show hour like times on the website, and he played until 1:55 in the morning.
God damn.
And then we were in East Rutherford, New Jersey, needing to get back to the city. Right. So we really didn't get back to the city until like 4:30. Yeah. And then we were like, we can't sleep. Like, come on. Like that was unbelievable. I don't know.
So you've clearly seen him a bunch. I am someone who has not seen Bruce Springsteen. That sounds like something that is a special, like again, like kind of like an outlier type show for him. Have you ever seen anything else other than like that since or before, where he plays until 1 or 2 in the morning or?
That was an outlier show for sure. So yeah, the post-COVID Bruce thing really changed a lot. He started really upcharging for tickets, so it kind of made it hard for us to do multiple shows in a run. And instead we were like, all right, we'll take the cheap seats, and the floor also changed. There's like a small pit, and now the back of the floor is ticketed.
Yeah.
So that's really quite different. And then he also switched to a static set list where he was playing the same set list, give or take 1 or 2 songs. Whereas back in 2012, like there were some songs you'd get, like you'd hear Born to Run and Dancing in the Dark. But like there was, looking at the set list from that night, he played Cynthia live for the first time since 2008. He covered Who'll Stop the Rain by Creedence Clearwater. Cool. Joel Blown, This Little Girl, Pay Me My Money Down, like all of these random songs.
Yeah.
And then closed the show with Meeting Across the River into Jungle Land. I don't know if you know Jungle Land, but that's it. I just remember like screaming, and like I'm the guy with like my arms crossed, and I was just like, oh my God. So the static setlist thing was kind of a bummer for a while, but then recently he sort of switched it up, and I went to see him at MetLife 2 years ago, and that was an incredible show. And then he just did See Here Now at Asbury Park and sat in with Trey, which was so cool, on Kitty's Back. And that show he switched up quite a lot. And so there were these real sort of glimmers of what it was like, back in, I started seeing him in 2007, in those years of going to see him, where the set list was super sporadic and he'd play these really long shows. But he's also somebody who in Europe has a totally different reception. And that's why I was like, I don't want to spoil my best show ever. But if you watch the Live in Barcelona DVD, it's also on YouTube. You can just see this Barcelona crowd go absolutely crazy. It's like these waves of people jumping up and down for every song. It's I've never seen him abroad, but I would love to.
It's like that happens with a bunch of bands. Like the live DVD release was such a thing in the early 2000s. Like I feel like that was like every gift either I got or my dad got or my uncles got was like a live DVD of some artist from somewhere. And like everyone had some like not Spain, but like Rush had a live show in Rio that was like the crowd is just like if unlike anything you've ever seen. I mean, and a Rush crowd is pretty animated, and it's like people standing on top of each other and all this stuff, and like there that has got to be a treat to like get up to Europe and see your favorite artists amongst like a nation of people who also knows them. It's cool to see. I mean, it's awesome to see Bruce in New Jersey, I'm sure. Like that's like, that is Bruce Mecca. You know what I mean? Like that's fucking the spot. But like, couldn't be a cooler thing to go out to Spain and like be in a crowd of people who are also just as taken by this guy across the world,
I mean, even that music resonates so much, like knowing every word to like the B-sides, it's like very, very cool
Yeah.
to see.
And they,
Yeah.
typically when you're seeing an artist overseas, like they have not been to that location a ton of times, like they have been to, East Rutherford. Or maybe they have, maybe they've toured through there a bunch, but like not like they tour in the US, and especially not living in New York. And so you're getting this crowd that's just like feverish for this moment. Yeah, I don't know. That's a crowd that I want to find myself in at some point as a Bruce show, but it's always been like a daunting thing for a guy who's not a fan. Who not a
Well,
fan.
maybe that's where we'll have our first in-person hang.
I would kill for that. That would be awesome.
That would be so fun. It just reminded me that there is a show from that same year, 2012. It's the longest Bruce show on record, and he's in Helsinki.
Yeah.
And I've listened to it, and he's just like, Helsinki, we're not gonna stop. We are just gonna keep playing. Like, so cool.
So cool.
Imagine just being there, like Bruce Springsteen's yelling at you, telling you, Helsinki, we're not gonna stop playing. It's like, yeah.
I'm so glad we came to this.
So glad we came to Helsinki, man. This is great.
This worked out in a big way. Thank you so much for sharing some of your favorite shows with me, man. It's great to chat with you. I am interested in hearing more about the Phish studies work that you're doing right now, and how that works into like either the shows that you've seen, or has it affected the shows that you see now, or do you have a new relationship to this band that you've loved for so long?
Sitting down and thinking about this stuff for the Phish studies purpose has definitely changed things a bit. I can tell you there's a book on Phish and Judaism called This Is Your Song Too.
Yeah.
That I have a chapter in where I talk about SPAC 2009 and Fishman singing I Kissed a Girl by Katy Perry. And like being a kid going into high school, being like, this speaks to me in like this whole other way. And like, I won't do the chapter from the book for you now.
That's fair.
But
go read
that was certainly...
I'll read the chapter.
That was certainly... read the fucking book. So that I sort of wrote about it abstractly, and the editor of the book was like, why don't you pick a show and like pick a moment in a show and like orient your experience there. So that's been a very sort of cool exercise in and of itself. Phish Studies is just formally creating an association. So it's going to be like an independent 501c3.
Cool.
And we're going to have more conferences. And there's a book called Concepts We'll Ponder, which is, will be the proceedings from the first conference. And it's so cool to see people, put their other interests in conversation with Phish and sort of see what emerges. And there have been a lot of really personal work and a lot of very scholarly work and different things in between. And that's just been a joy. So I, encourage people to look out for the next time we do a conference and, get in touch if you were interested in, joining in any way, shape, or form. It's, everyone from professor emeritus at some big prestigious university to, lay scholars like myself. I don't have a university affiliation. I'm, a therapist by day. So, and by night sometimes you see patients at night, but therapist all the time.
Yeah.
But it's been a very fun thing to be a part of, and it's kind of like extending the experience of the concert. I mean, we go back to the Airbnb and chill and talk about how the papers went and throw ideas around just as we do on Phish Tour.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's very cool work that's getting done. Do you have any conferences coming up that you could potentially plug, or?
I can't plug right this second, but there will be more to share soon. Yeah, there's things in the works for the end of the year, hopefully. So,
well, this will come out like maybe in the next month here, and so maybe I'll have a little something to share, like in the intro or outro. But
oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
that'd be great. I'll let you know.
Yeah, like you said that you guys come back with like questions after shows and things like that. Like what kind of stuff is coming up? Like anything that you can share?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, well, like for example, our first panel we ever did was at a performance studies conference, and Casbot Vox happened that year.
Yeah.
So for example, like we had a whole thing we were going to do at this like other conference about like we're Phish studies, and then that show happened where Phish was like we are going to be another
Yeah.
artist and create a whole like backstory for the art and debut a whole new set of songs that sound this way.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, back to the drawing board on what we were doing. Like we need to articulate what just happened with this to these people who are coming to see what it is we're about.
Yeah.
So that is certainly an example of it. And then the year of the clones.
Yep.
That New Year's Eve, I ended up writing a whole thing. I had a whole conference at NYU that got curveballed because of COVID, but that was really cool. We had Amanda Petrusich of the New Yorker and Ben Ratliff of the New York Times, and all of these people who are going to come speak about Phish at NYU. But I that paper's so funny because I'm basically just arguing that we need to take Phish seriously, but I'm talking about the clones.
Yeah, right.
And Trey getting stuck. So it's always sort of like self-referential and very fun and silly in the same way. But yeah, man, I don't know. Phish studies.
Phish can be taken seriously in a way that you can make fun of yourself within. I mean,
very well put.
Both can be super and should be, I think, super true. This has always been a very silly experience for me. Seeing Phish, liking Phish, enjoying the music, dissecting the music. That has all been. Phish themselves are very silly, but like the experience could not be more serious to me. Could not be more important to who I am. And so it's both. It really is both. Yeah.
And that's how they take it too, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's, their approach to it. And, they've spoken explicitly and implicitly about that. And it's what, yeah. So
yeah,
it's very cool.
And, and that's how this podcast will be taken very seriously, but also hopefully, but also hopefully made fun of course.
I feel like I've just been shouting because I'm so excited to talk with you.
No, I'm excited to talk with you too, man. And it sounds like, you've got a bucket of shows that you could reach into for hours. And so to parse it down to just a few had to be difficult. I appreciate you doing that for us today.
Basically the Grateful Dead and Phish, a little Bruce Springsteen thrown in there.
It's weird. Those guys never get brought up on this podcast. It's crazy.
I noticed that. A lot of New Kids on the Block, actually.
It's mostly New Kids on the Block. If we're lucky when we can talk about Trey, but it's mostly New Kids on the Block. Yeah. So that was my conversation with Isaac Slone. Just a wonderful dude. Man, I cannot wait to meet Isaac in person. Can't wait to see a show with the guy. And just chop up music with them, just talking about tunes. It's the best kind of conversation to have. That's why I do it for an hour recorded on the internet. So again, guys, hope you enjoyed the episode. Hope you've been enjoying it all the season. If you'd like to support the show, go ahead and like and subscribe anywhere you can. Comment on things when you can. Leave a review, even if it's leave a positive review. I would love that if you could. But until next time, guys. Have a great show.